Only one time.
I think we can start now. You're all welcome to today's presentation. For the past 2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks, I can say 2 weeks, we have been discussing sample size determination. And I think we should round up today, except if we talk about something else by Thursday. Maybe we cannot finish up because we are supposed to finish up with the sample size determination and quickly discuss design effect. If we cannot discuss that, we will now discuss the design effect on Thursday. We have been talking about sample size determination, and there are some formulas that have been brought out, and we have looked at those formulas and factors that contribute to the sample size. And now I just want us to extrapolate the sample size determination to special situations like case control and cohort study. For randomized control trial, the sample size determination, quickly make mention of it, but it's not far different. It's not different, actually, much different from sample size determination for comparative study. And why should case control and cohort study have special consideration? Because the method of selection quite differ from every other study design. Like the method of selection for experimental design is not too far from what you have in a comparative study. But for case control, as we all know, that you get the cases, and most of the time, the case control is more appropriate in a situation where the disease is rare. It is cheaper to conduct than cohort study. Both of them, they are analytical study, they are observational study. So it's like they came into board in situations where you cannot do experiment. Like for example, you cannot say you want to know the effect of cigarette on maybe on the health, maybe occurrence lung cancer. And now say you are conducting experimental study to give people cigarette to smoke for a while and now see the effect. You know, it is not ethically right. So in such situation, what you do is to study those who are on their own without any question of body, naturally, take cigarettes and see and study the effect of the cigarette on the health, maybe how it relates to lung cancer. So both of them, they are observational and analytical study. Of course, we know that case control, cohort study is usually call it longitudinal. Both of them are longitudinal anyway, but we call it prospective, but it can be retrospective also. Cohort study is closer to experimental design in the sense that you follow up also, but it's quite more expensive than experimental design. And because you follow up for longer period of time for the disease to occur on its own. So if you have to do that, you may even follow up for years, 40 years, and you may not see any appreciable number of cases. Especially if the disease is very rare. In that situation, if the disease is very rare, and the fact that cohort study is very expensive, and you may even conduct, you may not buy any result after spending so much. So the intelligent people now came up with case control, where if you can identify the cases, few cases you can identify. Most of the time, usually they usually use multi-center study, because for you to identify case, you may not even see the cases in a particular location, all of them. You see few cases, maybe scattered all over the nation, even continent. So in that situation, you have to, wherever the cases are, you look for them, and you now recruit control that correspond to the number of cases and many factors. Apart from the fact that this control, the only thing that makes them to be different is that they don't have this as the cases. So because of the situation that the disease is very rare, you now discover that you may not even have enough. In a situation where you just have 2 cases, 10 cases, or less than 20 cases. So even when you now recruit control, you may have to double the control or triple or tetraple the control. But it is advised that you don't go more than tetraple the control. And that is why, because of this consideration, they have special consideration for sample size. You see, the formula are a little bit complex, which we are not going to be explaining much apart from just explain the element of the formula. Even there are more complex ones, in trying to control for continuity. There's another one you have to do to compare. I won't bother you. We talk about continuity correction, correct continuity rather, continuity correction when we discuss chi-square. And for those of us that attended our training on comparison of proportion, we discuss correction. Let's just quickly, as a way of revision, because I know some people were not here and maybe they are joining us for the first time. I will not go through all those things we have done from the time we started, especially all those different modalities, ways of calculating sample size for one group study, then analytical study. But I just want to revise something so that everybody will be at the same page. The factor, what are those things you consider? There are 4 things we listed, and these are those 4 the effect of these factors on sample size. There are 4 factors. This slide just show the effect of these factors on the sample size. 5 factors rather. Well, the first one is the minimum expected difference. That the difference you want to detect between 2 groups, and this difference, as the difference increases, of course, your sample size will decrease because the minimum expected difference move in opposite direction to sample size because it forms the denominator of the formula. When the denominator becomes big, eventually it will reduce the entity you are calculating. But if the denominator becomes smaller, it will increase it. So if the difference you are trying to detect between 2 groups is very small, the implication of that is that the sample size will increase drastically. But if the difference is very wide, it will reduce the sample size. So measurement variability, we know something like variance that are spread apart are those attributes in the population. If they are well spread apart, you need larger sample size to detect what you want to detect. And because that one is part of the numerator. So if you increase the numerator, it will increase the sample size. It will increase the entity you are calculating. Then stringency of statistical tests. That one talk about the levels. If your level is significant, your type 1 error rate set at 0.05, which is 5%. That shows that your level of confidence is 95%. No level of confidence and level of significance add up to 100%. So that shows that your standard normal deviate that will go into the calculation is 1.96. If it's 5%, 1.96. If it is 2T, if it is 1T, 1.645. So that one, because it's from part of the denominator also, and numerator rather, it increases as the test increases. Then stringency, that's the stringency I just said. Like now, if you want to reject null hypothesis as 0.01, which is 1%, that shows that your level of confidence is 99. 99 is greater than 95. So you are more stringent when you want to reject null hypothesis at 0.01. That is, your p-value must be less than or equal to 0.01 before you can say it's significant. So of course you are more stringent than the person that says the P1 must be less than or equal to 0.05. So the level of confidence with the 1% is 99, or 5% is 95. You know, the level of confidence and the level of significance add up to. So 99% is more. So the Z that goes into the formula is bigger with 99% confidence level. So as the Z increases, the sample size increases. So it's formed part of the numerator. Desired power, we also talk about power. The power of 80, the Z that correspond with power. It formed the numerator also. Is 0.84. If you increase the power to 19, the Z increases to 1.28. So as the power increases, the sample size increases. So the last one is the sample size for 2T analysis is greater than sample size for 1T analysis. That one I've explained it also. Like for example, if you see your level of significance is 0.05, 95% confidence level. For 2T test, the Z that correspond with that is correspond to that is 1.96, but for 1T is 1.645. That shows that the value of that Z is bigger with 2T test. So 2T test, the analysis will require bigger sample size than 1T. So we don't want to waste more time. We have already talked about study design affecting the sample size, then number of groups you are studying, and the variables, either quantitative or qualitative. That is, if your outcome variable is continuous, it's number, like age, like blood sugar, like height, weight. Of course, the way you calculate differ from when it is percentage, like proportion. You say, when you say prevalence of something, it's percentage. So the formula, so both of them just have corresponding formula for the same thing. So you are dealing with quantitative or qualitative outcome. So the sample size issue, which I've already, the study design issue, the most important thing there is not actually whether it's experimental or not experimental. It's whether you are dealing with one or more than one group. If it is one sample, one group you are studying, you want to take only one sample, then it's different from when you are taking two samples. Well, it's not actually, it's more like it's not even sample, it's the number of data sets you want to get. Because if your data set, the two data set or three data are from different groups, that shows that you are having three different samples or two different samples. That is independent. But if your data set are from the same person before and after, is still two data set, but is before and after paired, or we call it repeated measure. So those are the things that determine the type of sample size. I also talk about when you're not dealing with three individual group, independent groups. You don't need, you have to, in calculating, trying to look for the difference between groups, you are looking at two groups per time. So we said that if you have three groups now, you have to pair them in three ways to calculate the sample size, three different sample size, pairing them in different ways so that then whichever one is bigger is your sample size. So this is the formula for descriptive study, which we have looked at. Then we also talk about sample size for analytical study, where we talk about 2 groups or 3 groups, or 4 groups, or 5 groups. Then either independent or pair. We have discussed them. We still come back to this one because we have already said that for experimental design, it can be independent, it can be paired also. Just like any observational study, can have 2 groups independent, which we call comparative study, or it can be paired also. We call it the repeated cross-sectional study, where you do on the same group, you do again. In what I call experimental design, it's the same thing. You can have 2 independent groups, or 3 or 4, or you can have before and after. You see, we know that for cohort study and case control study, there are 2 independent groups. There are usually 2 independent groups. Now, let's quickly, because we have gone through all this. So all you need to do is to go and watch the video of those lectures we have given. we have given before. So for today's one, let's quickly look at case control and cohort study. So let's look at, on the left, you can see the case control formula for case control. On the right side of the screen, you see for cohort study. If you look at it, it's not too far from what we have looked at, not too far, but there are a lot of differences. So we have numerator and denominator. If you want to, you will see that the denominator appears to be the same, almost the same pattern for all the sample size. That denominator, which we call either minimum expected difference, or you call it level of precision. If it is only one group, it's level of precision. If it is two groups, we call it expected difference, the difference you want to detect. So if it is categorical, we already said that it's a proportion. You remove the percentage from the proportion from the other one, the two proportion. If it is numerical, you remove the mean of one from the other. This is what I'm trying to show. We show that for the comparative study. You can see the formula. On one side, comparison of proportion. On the other side, comparison of mean. This now, you see the denominator is almost the same. You can be written another way, D. You can call it D. Instead of saying P1 minus P2, you just put it different. The same thing, instead of you saying M1 minus M2, you put it different, D square. So if you look at the formula for case control and core, is the same. It's only the numerator that have some complex element. The other thing also that are similar, you see Z alpha, which is the standard normal deviation that corresponds with the level of significance. We have it there also. Whenever we are talking of two groups, once we have more than one group, we will talk. Though, okay, when we have more than one group, we talk about power and significant criterion. But if you are having only one group, it's only the significant criterion you talk about. Look at it. The minimum, look at this formula. The minimum N there is the minimum number of cases case subject required. You know, it's case control. Case control means that you have cases of disease. If it is lung cancer, you have case of lung cancer. Or if it is varicose vein, you have cases of varicose vein. So the minimum number of cases you need is what we have. But it can be dicey. Later you get to know that in a situation when you even calculate and you are looking for the case, you cannot even see up to that. And you have to do what you have, because in many cases the disease is fairly rare when you want to do it. So you may even calculate still, cannot see the required number of cases you have calculated. So if you're way, you are lucky to see some cases, you can just go ahead and do. You go to see one quotation that we used to wrap up the presentation. So it's not all the time that you must calculate sample size, but it's required for many reasons. I think I talked about when it was after a publication in early 90s that the early 90s that made some people need to open eye and say, okay, one must calculate sample size, because it was discovered that sometimes a well-conducted study may not detect what is meant to detect, and you might have spent money simply because there's no adequate sample size. Sample size is inadequate. So because of that, people now, even funders that want to fund projects require, because nobody wants to waste money, require minimum sample size calculation before they will put their money. But however, there are some situations that you may not even be able to find that, do that, and you still have to go ahead with the work, especially in case control study. So the standard normal deviation, the Z alpha is the standard normal deviation that corresponds to the level of significance. Z beta is standard normal deviation that corresponds to 1 minus power. We have discussed that before. Then population, the P subscript O is 0. P is 0. You can see there is the population prevalence of the exposure. No, here is somebody is raising hand. I would like us to finish. Is there a question? Let's also I will quickly finish so that you can ask your question. Unless if it's is it that you are not hearing? So you can ask who is the person that is raising hand. Or you can send a chat. You send a chat. If it's something very urgent, I will attend to that. Otherwise, we wait for question. Please, you can type your question and send it so that immediately after the presentation, we quickly look at the questions. Then standard normal deviation that corresponds to 1 minus power. Then population prevalence of exposure and probability. That is, in case control, you have the cases with you. So actually, the exposure now, what you think what you think lead to the cases, what you want to actually find out. Your study now is not looking for the cases now. It's looking for what are those factors that contribute to the cases. That's what it's looking at. So the P0 there is population prevalence of that exposure. Like for example, if it's lung cancer you are studying, the factors you are studying is cigarette smoking. So what is the prevalence of cigarette smoking in the population? Then P1 is probability of exposure and control. The control you want to recruit, what is the probability, what is the prevalence? That is not like the prevalence of the cigarette smoking among the control. It may be different from the general population. So now, M is the number of control subject per case subject. We have already said they establish it. That's why this one is special. Case control and custody are special. Because, for example, now the case control is most of the time for rare diseases. In that situation, you may need to recruit. You don't need to say 1 for 1. You may have to do 2 control for 1 case, or 3 control for 1, or 4 control for 1 case. So in that case, that thing has to go into the formula. M is the number of control subject per case subject. So if you, after establishing that, you now have bar P. Bar P is calculated from P1 plus P0 divided by M over 1 plus 1 over M. So if you look at all these elements, this second formula that are calculated, because the bar P is in the formula apart from P1 and P0. They have to calculate bar P is to calculate from P1 and P0 and the M, which is the number of control subject per case subject. So the references are in the slide also, so that we can actually get them. You can access the article. Then for cohort study, you see the formula also look the same, but it's not the same. Somehow. Then you see the same thing that is similar there is standard normal deviation corresponding to the level of significance. We have said before, and the power is the same for those formula, and it's the same for any study anyway, because it's surely constant. You show that you show your level of significance, you show the power, those are constant. So if you look at apart from the constant, what you need to get from previous study are those prevalence we just talked about here, the population prevalence for exposure for case control and the probability of exposure in the control. And it's you that will determine based on some factors how many cases you want to, if the disease is so rare, you may have to have 4 control per case. But if it's not too rare, you can even have 1. If it's a common disease, it's not rare, you can 1 for 1. If it's a little bit rare, 1 for 2 or 2 for 1, then like that. Because the reason being that if it's very rare, that shows that the number of cases available to you is very few. And if you really can't just say 1 for 1, you won't have enough to analyze. Just have scanty. Imagine if you have 20 or 15 cases of a disease. So you say, okay, let's bring 15 control. No, it doesn't make sense. You may have to, okay, let's just recruit up to 45 control or even 60 control for that 50 cases, for those 15 cases. That's the logic behind your HEM. How many control per subject, per case. Now, for cohort study now, the P0 is probability of event in control. If you look at the case control, because you are starting with the case, the prevalence of exposure is what you are looking for. But in this case, you have gotten the people that are exposed. Is the prevalence of the disease, the risk of the disease you want to calculate. In that case, the disease, call it event. Why I just calling it events, you can say either disease or event. But because the event is more generic, because sometimes somebody may be listening to us, it's not necessarily the person is a medical person. So even in medicine, in health generally, it's not only disease we study. So it may be another thing that is not actually the disease. So the probability of the event, which is the outcome we want to study, is the P0. And the probability of event in cohort, can you see? The probability of event, talking generally in the population, then the probability of the event in the cohort. Cohort are those people that are exposed, like cigarette smoking. The people that are smoking, you know, and you want to study the effect of smoking on lung cancer. So the probability of event of lung cancer among the people that are smoking in the previous study, you put it there. That is the P1. The number of control subject per case subject. So the number of control subject per case subject also, where yes, what you just mean, where you can say by cohort, per cohort. Let me even put the number of control per cohort, because that one also, in cohort study also, you have cohort and control. Cohorts are people that just, maybe they are doing the same thing. They are exposed to the same thing at the same time. Those are cohort. The word is from, borrowed from Roman Empire, military empire in those days. The cohort are those people that joined the military, then the Roman army, the same time. Maybe they are the same platoon, and they are cohorts because they enter the military the same time. Now, the number of years of the control subject per cohort. Now, the P bar also is a little bit different from the other one. MP0 over M plus 1. Now, let's quickly look at sample size calculation for randomized trial. I just repeated this one just for, if you look at the slide now, is similar, if you notice, similar, almost similar to, invariably similar to that of analytical study, though we want to call comparative study. All these studies actually, and once you are having more than one group, it's analytical. One group of, may not necessarily be more than one group of subjects, more than one group of observation, the data set you are going to collect. So because when we talk about group here, we're not actually talking of the group of subjects, but the group of data set. Because there are some, if the group of data sets, you have 2 group or 3 group of data set are from different group, then it can be from different group. In that case, we are talking of different group of subjects, and we call it independent group. But there are situations where you have group of data set from the same group of people. You still call them group also, but call it pair group or repeated group. So group here does not actually mean, may not necessarily mean group of subject, mean group of observation. We can breed from different subjects, that is independent group, or from the same subject, as pair group or repeated group. So now it's the same thing. If any study that have more than one measurement is analytical. And by nature, experimental design is always like that. There's no experimental design without more than one measurement. That's why some people call pre and post, or they will have control. If we don't have pre and post, they will have control group. So somehow you're going to have more than one measurement in experimental design. So by nature, experimental design is analytical by nature. But that's not the only analytical. Anything cross-sectional analytical study, that one, there are 2 types, either comparative, 2 separate groups, or the same group you measure, take and repeated cross-sectional study. That's you measure more than one time from the same group, that's repeated. It's analytical. Or comparative group, 2 separate groups, or maybe 3 separate groups, they are all comparative. So if you look at the by nature now, the case control and core study, they are analytical study, but they are actually two independent. It cannot be before and after because you are dealing with two group of people. For case control, people will have that have the disease and control that don't have it. They are two different groups. For cohort, people that are exposed and people that are not exposed, they are two different groups. So this issue of before and after is only applicable to cross-sectional study and experimental design. In cross-sectional study now, you can have, if it is only one group, it's descriptive. So we know that it's just one measurement. But in a situation where you have measurement before and after, so it's still cross-sectional, but it's now analytical. So you can have the same thing, experimental design. Then the situation where you have the two groups that you are comparing for cross-sectional study, they are separate. That's what they call comparative studies, analytical study. And experimental design, you have that. You have the experimental and control. You can even have many. You can have one control and have 3 experimental group, 2 experimental group. You can even have 2 control, 2 experimental group. Whichever way. Once you have more than one observation you are taking, either from the same or separate group is analytical. So if you look at this formula now, it's exactly for the categorical, even experimental design, it's exactly the same thing for comparative study, the cross-sectional analytical study, where you have the P prevalence, because what you are measuring proportion. Exactly the same thing. But when you come, hello, I think we said that I'm almost through. You ask a question when I finish. Then continuous outcome. When it is continuous outcome, that's why I just put this one a little bit.
Are you too?
So for continuous outcome, you see this formula. If you notice, let me go to what we have before. Look at this one. For comparison of 2 mean, you will see that you have the Z alpha Z beta square, then standard deviation of group 1, standard deviation of group 2. You now see over M1 minus M2, mean of 1 and mean of group 2. We already said that it doesn't really matter, mean or proportion, which one is bigger or not. It doesn't really matter. One can be bigger because you are going to square it, that denominator. So which one is bigger, whether the number 1 is bigger than number 2, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change anything. Because even if you get negative, by the time you remove one from the other, it gives you negative. When you square it, then negative cancels out. So the only what I just want you to see here, anyway, I'll move it, even that formula, I'll move it here, is the third one here. That's what I was showing there. If you look at number 2, this, look at this, number 2 and number 1 is the same. The only difference, M1 minus M2, you put D square. The difference between M and M1 and M2 is the D. So, but look at number 2 and number 3. In some situation, in experimental design, you want to look at the effect of the experiment. You don't necessarily have to say, okay, because what you are doing, it's possible somebody has not done it, this type of experiment you are giving. The special experiment, nobody has done it. So you may not say, okay, let's see, in a previous study, those who received this intervention and those who didn't receive, what is the difference? Because that's the logic between group 1 and group 2. So in that situation, it will save the headache of looking for 1 and 2. You want to give an experiment to a group and you want to see the effect. So what you now do, you can now decide, okay, my D, this change, you can determine, okay, I want the change of 15%. So you don't necessarily have to have standard deviation and mean or standard deviation on 2 separate studies. Once you have one, that is, can you see, the standard deviation is just 1. The only thing is that in the front of the equation, 2 is already there. 2, can you see? 2 is there. Before S1 squared plus S2, instead of having S1 squared, if you assume that S1 and S2 are the same, it will now be 2S squared. If S1 and S2 are the same, It will now be 2. That is the 2 in the form of in the front of the formula. It's actually the same thing. So in experimental design, you find out that is the formula you see here. You see the same thing. Yeah. So minimum sample size for each group. Standard normal deviate that correspond with the level of significance. Standard normal deviate that correspond with 1 minus 1, which is constant we have been looking at before. Then mean of group 1, all this one. Either this one just say D is minimum expected difference. Actually, the M1 and M2 is not necessary yet, just like what I have said. Or you can just set that this is, I want a change of 15%. You can calculate the 15% of the mean of what you get from your literature. Your home and dry. You can see that in all our presentation, we have gone through the sample size determination for different study design. However, there are still other considerations that we have not talked about, other considerations about sample size. Like for example, even after you have done your sample size and you know maybe you are doing a study that want to look at the factors influences so and so, and you have a lot of literature, you have included a lot of factors in your study, and you want to do regression, multiple regression to remove the effect of confounder. So it is believed that okay, you should have for each. Imagine you have you calculate your sample size. There are no more than 50 or 70, and you are having many factors you want to run, maybe 1 to 10. So it is recommended that the number, your sample size should be 10. That is, for each factor, you must have 10. You have 10 for each factor. So if you are running about 5 factors now, your sample size should not be less than 50. If you are running about 7 factors, should not be less than 70. If it's 10, should not be less than 100. So then in most cases also, if you calculate your sample size, it may be above that. But if you now find out that your sample size for one reason or the other is a little bit low, and you want to look at factors, and you have many of those factors, you may have to increase it, just arbitrarily increase the sample size. After all, the sample size should not go below what you have calculated. That's the logic behind minimum sample size. You can go above it. And the reason people don't actually advise you indiscriminately increasing your sample size is that in some situation, if a particular sample size can answer the question, why should you double it? Why should you now begin to spend so much money? Because collecting data also from, for a large sample is money. Your resources, you are wasting resources. In a situation where you need to manage your resources, you may be wasting. But it doesn't mean that it reduces power. In fact, if you increase it, it increases the power. So it's just for cost economic consideration. And that's why people frown about increasing your sample size indiscriminately. So if you now calculate your minimum sample size, you need to give some consideration. You have to give to increase it. All those considerations is not to decrease. You have to increase the sample size. And by the time you do that, you had more power to your study. I think, look at the quote I was talking about. If some years ago, 2 people, Kenneth and David, they published in Lancet, they said this: if the scientific world is insisted solely on lab trial, many unanswered questions in medicine will languish unanswered. Some shift of emphasis from a fixation on sample size to a focus on methodological quality will yield more trial with less bias. Unbiased trial with imprecise results trump no result at all. So it just try to play. That is all. If sometimes we say that would be a large, if the sample size is not large at all, you won't believe it. But the larger the sample size, the more money you spend, the more costly, and sometimes the money will not be there. And sometimes people now, if you don't want to do work that will be rejected, and you don't have the fund, you leave it. So sometimes one has to balance up. And it's also saying that it doesn't really mean that if sample size is very small and you now come, the quality you only focus on quality, but high quality, but there are some bias and some other things. Doesn't really justify your action. So it's an unbiased trial with imprecise result, trump no result at all. So one has to balance in between, not having the high result and also the quality of the study. Because sometimes you may not have much money, but you may have a good design that can answer a particular question. So one has to balance up so that we won't say that, because the sample size is not large, or I've not even made the minimum sample, I will not do it. Just like the case of case control. If you find yourself that you just have opportunity of getting few number of cases, even from different centers, and because the number of cases is not up to the sample size, it's better you don't miss the opportunity and go ahead to do the study, carry out the study, just leaving, because after a while you don't see the cases again, and for many years you may not see again. Those are the issues that Kenneth and David raised here. I think we can stop here for question. I think some people were, let me check. People have written, posted questions on chat. Yeah, I have seen chat here. Yes, I cannot hear you. So somebody say, could not hear me. Can people hear me now?
So we've always heard you, sir. Good evening, sir.
Okay, good evening. Because somebody said, I was afraid. Fine, thank you. I was afraid that all this talk, nobody heard me. Okay. Okay, please go ahead. Somebody said yes. Okay, I think the person. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Please, sir. What objective way can we decide to choose the number of control subjects per case? Will it be from previous studies? So do you mean per cohort as in the group, or per subject within the cohort? Well, I don't know, per cohort as in the group, or per subject within the cohort. If the subject, yes, the number in the, it's not the per, it's the number. If in the cohort, you have calculated your samples, you say, okay, you are studying 200 cohort. So how many, you don't usually have the problem with cohort studies. Yes, I'm now.
Okay.
We don't actually have the problem, because most of the time, cohort study are exposed. So number of exposure, people that are exposed to a particular factor, you easily find them more than number of cases of disease. So we usually have that problem with case control. But you can see how we record. That's why you see even in the formula, you say the number of control for each cohort. Because sometimes a particular factor also maybe we are talking of maybe drug, now people that take drug, maybe all those they have take hard drug, want to see the effect. Maybe dog are incremented in causing some problem. So you may discover that it's not people you readily see. And that's why many people use snowball sampling to get them where they are. So, and for you to do that also, you have to spend money. It's not just by without motivation. That type of studies, an individual cannot do it. You cannot say you just want to do a study and publish and do that. It has to be an organization that have money, because there's a lot of motivation. So there are some exposure that are also really at stake. So in that case, or you cannot easily find them. So if you may want to increase your number of controls small. But this problem is mainly with case control, because the number of cases may be rare and may be few. The cases may be rare and number of cases. And for you to have ample, in running analysis, if you don't have enough numbers, just like what we said, we won't be able to bring relationship between variables out. So that's why it's from experience now. So the number, there's no one logic, one formula. That is why it is when you, from whatever situation, from experience and many advice from experts. So when you are now calculating your sample size, you now factor what is the multiple you want to use, how many cases, how many control per case. Somebody say when a control no okay. When a control not needed. In what situation? That one is because the question is not so clear. In what situation? In case control, the controls are needed. In case control, in core study, control are needed. In experimental study, yes.
Asking
You
this
are
is
not the one that
that
asked the question. Yes, you want to ask another question.
you are following them up.
What do you say? This is breaking, yes? What do you say?
I still the answer I wanted. I was going to ask that first question in the chat. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Can you hear me now, sir?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can
Okay,
hear
I
you.
was the one that asked the first question in the those
I
first
know.
question.
I know, I read it. I think just...
Okay. So what I'm asking is, for cohorts, I wanted to know, like the way you said for case, you can have 3 or 4 controls. Now for cohorts, how many
no,
can
you cannot have that. No, you cannot have that. Even Coco, I don't even think you even have more than 2 double. You cannot even if to double self.
Okay.
Yes, because
so it's 1-to-1.
1-to-1 most of the time. It is where maybe if those one now you may say want to double in a situation where those that are exposed, they are not actually many. You understand me? So you want to do that. And that those type of people also, the implication you have here. We were talking of following up. In course, so you have to follow up. There's some people that are difficult to follow, and when you follow them, like all those, if you are studying people that are drug addicts now, follow up itself is money, because they are not from day one. You have to give them money to participate, to bring other people to come and join. Then even during the follow up, they continue as long as you are supplying them what they need, the money. So it's very, very expensive. Core studies are the most expensive, more expensive than experimental design. Because of this follow-up, you spend money. You follow up for many years. Because when you are following up, you are trying to review, and if there are cases you are trying to detect those cases and take some, do some observation also.
So, okay, when are you going to explain that cluster design effect to us?
Yes, yeah. Well, I was thinking maybe that would be next tomorrow. I've prepared wait for the better. No, I don't want it to prolong. I don't want the time to prolong yet. Actually, it has the cluster effect is because of you have already said cluster effect, design effect, because of the way you sample in survey, the situation where you want to get wide area survey, and people do, because of cost, you just do cluster that you get to a group in a village here now, you just take everybody eligible. So that it will be intra-class correlation, because it's just like somebody enter your household, they say they take measurement from everybody or from all the children eligible children. You know that in a particular household, there are some measurement that will be similar. Yes, that will be similar. Yes, I mean. So if you are studying nutritional status, if they are in the same house, they are eating the same. If they are all of them may be malnourished together. So you discover that you say you have taken measurement from 5 children in that house. It's just like 1, because all of them they are related. You get it now. So unlike if let's say you sample different from different locations, so you will now require bigger sample size to measure what you want to measure, because of that clustering effect. Okay. So is that design? So we'll talk about it maybe on Thursday. Let's just look at it on Thursday. Yeah. Where what is email and WhatsApp number with us? Okay, somebody say I should share. So all you need to do is to share your distance. Okay, I will just type the email. It's not the email per se, it's the my number. All you need to do is to, if your number is not on our WhatsApp, just privately, you don't want people to see your number, just privately chat it to me now. If you chat it to me, I will include the number in the WhatsApp group. This is our website. All the video, you can get it through our website on the YouTube, and you get the link to the YouTube through the website. Any other one?
I just have a question. I've asked it before, but let me ask it again.
Okay.
I did a randomized control trial some time ago. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I did a randomized control trial some time ago, and what I did in terms of sample size was that I used EpiInfo to calculate the sample size, and the one I got, I now divided it into two. I got 400, divided it into two, one for each group. And today, now it seems what I did was very wrong.
Yes, you know, we have been talking about this sample size now. For if you look at this formula here, we say that sample size for each group. Though the same formula, that's why you know the sample size issue is very dicey. If you read, there's hardly we use anything that is as confusing and where we have a lot of diversity when as sample size, because when you read different literature, sample size see different things. Now you will see that some of this formula you see here, you will see exactly the same thing, but they will put 2 in the front. It's the same thing, but the 2 will be in the front. 2 in the front means that you are doubling the whole thing. And that in that case, that is sample size for the 2 groups. So you divide by 2. But if you look at it here, when I note this, I say sample size for each group. If it's going to be for both of them, I will put 2 in the front. But all this one is sample size.
No, but this one I use software to. I use software.
Yes.
So I didn't put any formula.
Yeah.
So what I did
even
was,
in the software,
was it wrong?
You know, I don't know. The issue there, even in the same formula, it will tell you to give you option. Yes, I mean, and when it's one lag, it will tell you sample size for each of them. In fact, the machine will tell you for this is for group A, 290 for group A, 290 for group B. It will tell you that. So if it is for both group, it will say 290 for 219 or whatever for each group. Maybe you didn't take note, so it's not as if it's wrong. All this
I use that. I didn't use WinPaper. I use EpiInfo.
Yes, you can use
EpiInfo. I used. They didn't divide it like that.
Yeah, no problem. I don't think it's. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's for you. You know, machine is program. The program is there. It's for you to.
But they did not query it. They published it without querying it.
No, well,
they
that one doesn't really
matter.
Even publishing it without querying doesn't really matter. So sometimes you send your journal article to a particular journal, they reject you. Send another one, they accept it. So that one does not really matter. But I'm not saying you may not be doing the wrong thing. You are not that you are doing the wrong thing. Maybe it's you that didn't take notes, sir, and didn't know maybe it was right or not or wrong. I think it was okay because maybe they say it was for one group. You may not notice whichever way. Yes, we are saying something.
No, I think that your quote even sums it all. Because if there was quality in the way he did it, they might be interested in the result of it rather than not even having a result at all. So maybe the sample size, even if you did it, maybe because there are some journals that are like that. Some people just do experiment. They don't calculate sample size.
Let me tell you.
This foreign.
Yes, to corroborate what you are saying, the senior friends here, they will attest to that. That many times, sometimes you want to do a particular study, you even search literature, you cannot even find, maybe it's new. Nobody has done that before. And the situation, what you are studying is very rare. And you just have opportunity of having some data, for that particular study. You go ahead and do it. So by the time you publish it, people will now reference you and now improve on your study. So whatever you publish now is what people now say, oh, that is the prevalent in the previous study, they will now use. So as they are doing the improvement will now come for that particular condition. The question somebody was asking, I saw something. Somebody asked where I wanted to talk about it.
I was actually trying to ask that in what situations don't you in terms of experimental design?
Okay, yes, my mind was not going there. Maybe you are talking of experimental design. Yes, there are some situations you don't use control. You allow the group to control for themselves. So it has been found that it is better that you allow the group to control. You know, it's the matter of these two, you know, we have already said that experimental design by itself has control. That is, it's analytical. There's comparison in your measurement. You must take measurement, at least more than one measurement, group of measurement, either from separate group or from the same group. But it has been found that the one you take from the same group is better because it controls more for extraneous factor. Because those two, no matter how you mesh, you do all those, do your randomization, the two groups are different. They are different set of people. So, but this other one, the same person, you now put two conditions. Like for example, now you want to maybe treatment for a particular ailment. You give the treatment, you measure after the treatment, you measure, take measurement of your outcome measure, and allow the effect of the drug to wear off. And now after some days, you now give another treatment, the second type of treatment, and now take your measurement. They believe, you know, in scientific world, they believe that it's because it's the same person, the variation is less. Okay. They are in between participant variation, inter participant variation is not there. So it's now the only thing is what is within. So they believe that it's that experimental design that use the same set of people as to control for themselves is of higher quality than the one that have separate control. And some people also they combine the two. They do crossover study. They have two groups. They administer the study to one group receive treatment A, the other group receive treatment B. So both of them control for themselves. So sometimes they can have another control. Then they now switch over, which call it. So after the effect of those things as well, they now switch over the treatment. But of course, there are limitations because there are situations. If it is surgery, if it is medical something, giving treatment, you can do that. But if it's surgery, you cannot do that because you cannot say you perform this type of surgery for somebody and I say, okay, let me reverse this something, let me perform for surgery. If it is surgery, you cannot do that. So
invariably, what you are trying to say is that most experiments that actually involve collection of peer data, you may not really need to use control. Is that what you are trying to say? That's
what I'm telling you. There's no need. Before and after, there's no need for another group control. Because they have given you take the measurement before, you also take after. So even if it is something you give, if you take what the measurement, the measurement before you administer your even if you have education, whatever you administer, you not take the measurement later. It is believed that if there's any difference, it is the effect of that particular thing you do. But many people they will do that, they will still have the control. But people do it a lot. They say they give health education. They say if you want to do, if you actually you have a group of people, you randomly select them into where you randomly select them into experimental and control. You can give, and you believe that in all particular things they are all the same. If you give your education and now come and see you see the difference, the control, then the experimental and the control. If there's any difference, that's the difference. But why maybe most of them do that is that in public health, it's not actually clear because most of that they cannot do randomized control. They only do quasi-experimental because there's no randomization. There are situations where you cannot randomize. Like for example, we want to talk about the effect of maybe peer group this thing among secondary school, or instead of using a particular teaching method you want to see the effect on the performance of students. Even though you say that you are selecting different schools. If you want to select the same school, you cannot select the same school or school that are close together and say you mix them together, now randomize them and now separate this and this in the same school. Whatever you are teaching this one, it will filter to the other one. So that is why what they now do now to take a school and now look for similar school when it comes to other social demographic characteristics far away and now take as the control, believing that whatever they are now giving to this school, the experimental group, will not filter to the other group. But in that situation, they are not the one that selected the children to that school. Those schools, they are there. So in that case, there's no randomization. And the randomization is the hallmark of experimental design. So in that case, it's non-randomized. That's what they call more like semi-random, semi-experimental. So that's why they call it quasi-experimental design. So you can see that all those randomization, all those things is actually difficult. So it's difficult to do in public health. Because of that, they will still do their pre and post control experimental just to look for. Sometimes if they don't know how to analyze also, they can confuse themselves, and especially some people bring a wrong result. They bring a wrong result, wrong interpretation. They are well-designed study, but people cannot interpret, give wrong interpretation to the study. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know. Is there any other one? Okay, no, if there's no. So if there's no other question, I think we can stop there. Yes, let me just pause the recording then, since there's no more question.